The galaxy is vast, ancient, and full of civilizations that have risen and fallen across the endless stretch of time. Empires have waged wars, alliances have formed and crumbled, and species have competed for dominance over the stars. But among the countless beings that inhabit this cosmic stage, one species stands apart, not for its physical might, nor for its technological supremacy, but for something far more terrifying: its fury. Humanity, a species often underestimated, has a history of resilience, defiance, and an unmatched ability to turn rage into a force capable of reshaping reality itself. And when humanity gets angry, the galaxy pays the price. Imagine for a moment an interstellar council, a federation of advanced alien species, gathered to discuss the presence of humans in the galactic community. Some advocate for cooperation, recognizing the potential of these newcomers, their adaptability, their ingenuity. Others, however, see humanity as a threat. A species that evolved on a death world, one that survived ice ages, plagues, global wars, and self-inflicted destruction, only to rise stronger, every time. They are volatile, one alien delegate argues. They are unpredictable and reckless. If their history is any indication, we must act now before they become unstoppable. And so a decision is made. Humanity must be contained, controlled, perhaps even eradicated. But those who believe that humans can be conquered have failed to understand one fundamental truth. Humanity does not start wars, but it ends them. History is filled with examples of humanity's terrifying response when provoked. When Rome was sacked by the Gauls, the survivors rebuilt it into an empire that would last 1,000 years. When Europe was devastated by the Black Death, the Renaissance emerged from the ashes. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, the United States transformed its entire economy into a war machine, defeating the Axis powers in less than 4 years. And when the Twin Towers fell, the world witnessed the full force of modern military retaliation. Humanity's response to aggression is never a whimper. It is an explosion. And in the galactic arena, that pattern does not change. The first mistake the aliens made was assuming that humans feared death as they did. Many civilizations had evolved in peaceful, controlled environments, where natural selection no longer dictated survival. For them, war was strategic, political, a game of influence. But for humanity, war was something else entirely. It was primal. It was personal. And when the first shots were fired against Earth's colonies, the galaxy discovered what it truly meant to awaken the sleeping giant. The attack was swift, devastating. A coalition of alien empires, armed with centuries of interstellar warfare experience, launched a coordinated strike against humanity's outer settlements. Millions perished in the first wave. Cities turned to ash, space stations obliterated. The aliens expected surrender. They expected humanity to beg for peace, to accept their place as an inferior species under galactic control. But they did not understand. Humans do not surrender. They endure. They adapt. And when they are wronged, they seek vengeance. The first few days after the attack were filled with shock and grief. Humanity had never faced an enemy so overwhelming, so technologically superior. The colonies on Kepler 442b, Proxima Centauri, and Mars were nothing more than smoldering ruins. The death toll climbed into the billions. The United Earth government, once fractured by politics and bureaucracy, was suddenly unified by a singular burning purpose: retribution. There was no hesitation, no debate. The galaxy had made its choice, and now humanity would respond the only way it knew how. Not with words, but with fire. Across Earth and the surviving colonies, the engines of war roared to life. Shipyards that had once built vessels for exploration and commerce were repurposed overnight, constructing warships at an unprecedented rate. Factories churned out weapons, armor, and drones with relentless efficiency. Every man, woman, and machine capable of fighting was mobilized. Scientists, engineers, and strategists worked around the clock to close the technological gap between humanity and its adversaries. Artificial intelligence, once restricted for fear of rebellion, was given full autonomy to design new tactics, optimize battle formations, and create weapons that no alien mind could predict. And then, there were the soldiers. The Galactic Council had assumed that human ground forces would be irrelevant, that planetary invasions would be unnecessary, because surely no species would willingly send fragile organic bodies against advanced alien war machines. But that was another miscalculation. Humanity had been perfecting the art of war for millennia. It had fought with swords, arrows, muskets, tanks, jets, and cybernetics. Now it would fight with exoskeletons, railguns, and genetically enhanced super-soldiers. The elite combat units, known as the Revenants, were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Engineered for speed, strength, and endurance, with neural implants that allowed them to process combat scenarios in microseconds. But beyond all the weapons, beyond all the strategy, it was something far more terrifying that made humanity unstoppable. Its sheer, unrelenting willpower. The counterattack did not begin with an official declaration of war. It did not come with demands for surrender or diplomatic negotiations. No, it began in the dead of night, when an entire fleet of alien warships, 40 vessels strong, simply vanished from existence. The official records of the Galactic Council listed it as an unexplained anomaly. The truth, however, was far worse. Humanity had developed stealth technology so advanced that it allowed ships to slip past even the most sophisticated detection, grids. The strike was surgical. Boarding teams infiltrated the ships in complete silence, slaughtering their crews before they could even send a distress signal. The vessels were then hijacked, reprogrammed, and turned against their former masters. One by one, the enemy's fleet started to crumble. Communication networks were hacked, supply lines were severed, and planets that had once been considered fortresses fell without a single human casualty. Panic spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. This was not the response they had expected. They had assumed that humanity would retaliate in predictable ways, rushing into battle, fighting with brute force. But humanity was not playing by their rules. It was fighting a different kind of war. A total war. And the galaxy was not ready for it. The war was no longer a war. It was an extinction event. The galaxy had never seen anything like it before. Humanity did not merely fight to win, it fought to erase the very possibility of another attack. Entire fleets of alien warships were torn apart in ambushes before they could even react. Orbital bombardments reduced enemy strongholds to wastelands of molten glass. For every human colony that had been destroyed, 10 alien worlds burned in return. The message was clear. There would be no negotiations, no truces, only vengeance. At first, the alien empires refused to believe what was happening. They had ruled the stars for millennia, their civilizations stretching across thousands of systems. No single species had ever threatened them before. No single species had ever resisted their rule. They had fought countless wars, crushed countless rebellions, but none of those enemies had been human. Humanity fought with an intensity that defied logic. Its soldiers did not retreat, did not surrender, did not hesitate. They moved with a precision that no organic species should have possessed, their strategies evolving in real time, as if they could see the battlefield from every angle at once. And in a way, they could. Artificial intelligence, once feared by humanity itself, had now become its greatest weapon. Tactical AIs calculated enemy movements before they even happened, predicting battle outcomes with near-perfect accuracy. Cybernetic soldiers, enhanced beyond the limits of biology, executed missions with mechanical efficiency. Drone swarms filled the void of space, each controlled by an intelligence so advanced that it made alien warships look like ancient relics. The enemy's technological advantage? Gone. Their numerical superiority? Useless. The Galactic Council scrambled to respond, calling upon the oldest, most powerful empires to intervene. Armadas that had once ruled unchallenged descended upon human-occupied space, prepared to crush the upstart species once and for all. But they did not understand what they were walking into. By the time the first of their war fleets arrived, humanity had already adapted. Their ships were no longer the crude vessels of a fledgling species, they were death incarnate. Hulls reinforced, with self-repairing nanometal, weapons that bent the very laws of physics, shields that could withstand bombardments for days on end. And the worst part? Humanity had no interest in simply holding the line. It was not content to fight defensively. It wanted to hunt. Fleet after fleet fell to ambushes that left no survivors. Supply routes were turned into graveyards of shattered ships. Entire planets went dark overnight, their defenses overwhelmed before they could even call for help. And, for the first time in galactic history, the predators of the universe learned what it meant to be prey. But even as the war turned into a massacre, something darker loomed on the horizon. Humanity was not just fighting to win anymore. It was fighting to make sure that this never happened again. And that meant one thing: extermination. The Galactic Council, once the unquestioned rulers of the stars, was now in full crisis mode. Their fleets, once mighty and unchallenged, were being ripped apart at an accelerating pace. Their battle strategies, honed over millennia of conflict with lesser species, were failing against an enemy that adapted faster than any artificial intelligence they had ever designed. It was not just that humanity fought with better weapons, stronger ships, or deadlier soldiers. It was that humanity fought like nothing they had ever seen before. The war had entered a stage that historians would later call the unrelenting purge. It was no longer just about battlefields or territorial conquests. It was systematic annihilation. The moment a species was confirmed to have participated in the attack on humanity's colonies, their fate was sealed. No negotiations, no mercy, only extinction. Entire worlds were erased from the galactic maps, some through orbital bombardment, others through engineered biological weapons that targeted specific DNA structures, leaving only the ruins of their once proud civilizations behind. And then there were the Revenants, humanity's most terrifying warriors. These soldiers, genetically enhanced, cybernetically improved, and psychologically conditioned for absolute lethality, became the nightmare of every alien commander. They did not just fight, they hunted. Reports from surviving enemy soldiers painted a picture of absolute terror. Revenant squads would infiltrate enemy installations undetected, eliminating entire garrisons before alarms could even sound. They left no bodies, no evidence, only silence and empty corridors. Some commanders believed they were dealing with a supernatural force, not flesh and blood warriors. Others simply refused to believe their reports were real, choosing instead to assume that their forces had abandoned their posts and fled. But the truth was far worse than fear or cowardice. Humanity was proving, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it was the single most dangerous species in the galaxy. It wasn't just about their military power. It was their mindset. The Galactic Council had been composed of species that had grown complacent, believing their technology and numbers made them untouchable. They relied on protocol, hierarchy, and established strategies. But humanity? Humanity had spent its entire history adapting to the impossible, overcoming extinction events, and fighting wars where the only rule was survival. And now, with its back against the wall, it was drawing upon every ounce of that history to destroy the enemies who had dared to challenge it. Still, the Council refused to accept what was happening. They believed that somewhere, somehow, there was a way to turn the tide. Surely, a species that had only recently achieved interstellar flight could not be unstoppable. Surely humanity had limits, and so they turned to their last option. An option so desperate, so reckless, that it had been outlawed for tens of thousands of years. They would summon the Silence. The Silence was not a species. It was not a fleet, or an empire, or even a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an event, a force of nature that had only been unleashed once before, eons ago, when the first great civilization of the galaxy had collapsed. It was a doomsday protocol, a forbidden technology buried deep in the core of the oldest worlds, hidden in the darkest archives of the most ancient species. It was not meant to be used lightly, but the Galactic Council had no choice. They activated it, and in that moment, something shifted in the very fabric of reality. Stars flickered, as if gasping in fear. Gravitational anomalies rippled through the cosmos. Entire sectors of space went dark, vanishing from sensors, as if erased from existence. Something was coming. Something beyond war, beyond hatred. The question was, had the Council just saved themselves? Or had they doomed the galaxy to something far worse than humanity's wrath? The moment the Silence was unleashed, the universe itself seemed to recoil. Entire regions of space went dark, as if light itself refused to acknowledge what had just been awakened. Ancient artificial intelligences, vast constructs that had existed for millions of years, began to malfunction, whispering warnings in languages long forgotten before going silent forever. Even the most advanced sensors of the Galactic Council could not perceive what had been done. All they knew was that something had changed. And then, it began. Across the galaxy, ships vanished without a trace. Not destroyed, not disabled. Simply gone. Fleets of thousands disappeared as if they had never existed. Planets once teeming with life became barren husks overnight, their atmospheres stripped away, their oceans boiled into the void. The Council's homeworlds, fortified for eons, were suddenly silent. Communications lost, defenses inactive, populations unresponsive. No distress signals, no survivors, just nothing. Panic erupted among the remaining species. Even those who had once been humanity's most hated enemies realized that something was wrong. Terribly, fundamentally wrong. The silence was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something older. Something that did not recognize borders or alliances. It did not distinguish between aggressor and victim. It consumed without bias, without emotion, without reason. For the first time in galactic history, the war was no longer about humanity. It was about survival. Humanity, however, was not blind to what had happened. Their deep space observatories had detected the disturbances. Their quantum AI systems had run trillions of simulations in an attempt to understand the patterns. And what they discovered chilled them to their very core. The silence was not simply erasing things, it was rewriting them. Entire star systems, once mapped and studied, now bore no resemblance to their original forms. Some were replaced by structures that defied physics, monoliths larger than planets, pulsating with energies unknown to any science. Others had become endless voids, where time itself seemed to stretch and collapse. The more humanity observed, the more they realized that they were dealing with something beyond war, beyond even revenge. The silence was a reset mechanism, a failsafe built into the universe itself, and it had been activated. But humanity was not like the other species of the galaxy. While the others fled in terror, hoping to find some safe corner of space to hide, humanity did what it had always done. It adapted, it fought, and now, it planned. The moment humanity understood what the silence was, it began developing countermeasures. Their greatest scientists and engineers, backed by the raw processing power of their most advanced AIs, worked relentlessly to find a way to halt the catastrophe before it consumed everything. They did not know if it was possible. But they knew one thing. If they did nothing, there would be nothing left to fight for. And so, they turned their attention to the ruins of the ancient civilizations, the ones that had mysteriously collapsed, long before humanity had ever reached the stars. There, buried beneath the dust of forgotten worlds, they found fragments of knowledge, hints that others had faced the silence before, that someone long ago had tried to fight it. The pieces began to fall into place. The galaxy had been reset before. The question was, who had reset it, and why? As humanity's fleets prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, they sent out a final message to the surviving species of the galaxy. A message not of revenge, not of war, but of warning. Run if you want, hide if you must. But if you want to live, if you want to have a future, you will fight alongside us. Because if we fail, there won't be a galaxy left to fight over. The galaxy was collapsing into chaos. The silence was relentless, unstoppable, entire. Sectors that had once been bustling hubs of trade and civilization now existed only as echoes in history. It did not destroy with fire and fury like humanity's warships. It did not conquer like the armadas of the Galactic Council. Instead, it simply erased. The stars themselves seemed to flicker, dimming one by one, as if being plucked from reality. And yet, amidst the terror, amidst the confusion, humanity refused to surrender. Their fleets, now augmented with technology reverse-engineered from the ruins of the ancients, pushed deeper into the heart of the phenomenon. While others saw only doom, humanity saw a battlefield, an enemy that could be studied, understood, and, if necessary, defeated. The first step was finding the source. The oldest surviving records from extinct civilizations all pointed toward one location: an ancient dead star system at the very edge of the galactic core, a place where no species had ever dared to go. The system, marked in alien texts with symbols translating roughly to the end of all things, had remained untouched for millions of years. Now, it was the only hope left. Humanity mobilized everything: colossal warships, bristling with experimental weapons and reinforced with exotic materials harvested from the ruins of long-dead empires, formed the largest fleet ever assembled. AI-controlled drones, faster and more adaptive than anything seen before, surged ahead like an iron tide. And at the heart of it all, a new breed of soldiers, the Revenant Prime, prepared for a battle unlike any they had fought before. The mission was clear: reach the system, locate the source, and shut it down, no matter the cost. But the silence was not passive. As humanity's fleet approached the forbidden system, reality itself began to shift. Space folded in impossible ways. Distances stretched and contracted. Time seemed to stutter. Ships found themselves caught in gravitational anomalies that had no center. Entire squadrons vanishing from existence as if they had never been there at all. The laws of physics, the very foundation of the universe, were unraveling. And then, they saw it. At the heart of the dead system, surrounded by the shattered remains of planets long forgotten, was the impossible. A structure larger than any megastructure ever conceived, pulsing with an energy that defied understanding. It was not built. It had not been constructed by any known species. It had always been there, waiting. A gateway, not to another star system, not to another dimension, but to the past. Humanity had uncovered the final secret of the silence. It was not simply a weapon. It was a mechanism designed to reset the galaxy itself. A cosmic failsafe built into reality by those who had come before. It had been activated before, and it would be activated again. The civilizations that had once ruled the stars, the ancient empires that had vanished without a trace, they had not fallen to war, or disease, or disaster. They had been erased, and now it was happening again. Humanity had two choices. They could stand by and allow the cycle to continue, knowing that all they had built, all they had fought for, would be erased. That eventually, new civilizations would rise, and the galaxy would begin anew. That their names, their victories, their very existence would be wiped from time itself. Or, they could break the cycle, but to do so would mean defying forces beyond their comprehension. It would mean fighting against the very fabric of reality. It would mean challenging the architects of the universe itself. And so, humanity made its choice. They would not be erased. They would not be forgotten. They would not allow history to be rewritten. Not this time. As the first human ships moved toward the gateway, ready to do the impossible, the silence itself seemed to react. The universe trembled. Space cracked. The battle for existence was about to begin. The war for existence had begun. As the first human warships surged toward the ancient gateway, reality itself twisted in protest. The silence, this unfathomable force of erasure, was no longer simply an observer. It fought back. It did not use weapons, nor did it command fleets. It was not a force that could be reasoned with. It was a law, an inevitability woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. And yet, humanity had never been ones to bow to inevitability. The first wave of human warships was the largest, most technologically advanced armada ever assembled. Hundreds of battlecruisers, each a mobile fortress, moved in perfect coordination. AI-controlled fighter swarms, their reflexes faster than any organic mind, carved through the anomalies that the silence manifested. Weapons fired into the void, high-energy particle lances, gravimetric imploders, reality-piercing railguns, each designed to attack something that was never meant to be fought. The gateway, the heart of the silence, pulsed with increasing intensity. The moment humanity had set foot in this forbidden system, the process had accelerated. The galaxy wasn't being erased at random anymore. The reset was happening now. Time itself was slipping. Within minutes, entire battle groups found themselves unstuck from causality. Some ships reported seeing themselves from moments in the future, only to vanish entirely a second later. Others fired weapons at enemy positions that had already ceased to exist. Communications became erratic, voices from the past and the future overlapping, turning orders into indecipherable chaos. And yet, humanity pressed forward. Because amidst the horror, they had discovered something. The silence was not just an automatic process. It had an origin, a trigger. Something, or someone, had activated it. Deep within the data archives recovered from extinct civilizations, humanity had found a clue. Every cycle of galactic reset had always started the same way. A single event, a single moment, where the mechanism was engaged. The ancient species had never realized it in time, but humanity had. The gateway was not just a source of the silence, it was the key to stopping it. A new plan was formed, one that defied all logic, all reason. If the gateway led to the past, then humanity would not just fight this war in the present. They would fight it across time itself. The Revenant Prime, the elite warriors engineered for this battle, were given one last mission. Their ships, modified, with experimental temporal drives, would breach the gateway and travel to the moment when the cycle first began. They would find whoever had set this catastrophe in motion and stop them, no matter the cost. The first squadron entered the gateway, and what they found changed everything. The moment they crossed the threshold, their instruments screamed in protest. They were no longer in real space, no longer bound by the laws they understood. Instead, they floated above a galaxy that was not their own. A galaxy in its infancy. A time before the first great civilizations had risen, and there, at the center of it all, they saw them. The architects. They were not gods. They were not conquerors. They were the first, the oldest, the ones who had created the cycle. Not out of malice, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear that any civilization growing too powerful would eventually bring about destruction on a universal scale. So, they had built the failsafe. The silence. A way to keep the galaxy from ever reaching a point of no return. And now, humanity stood before them. For the first time in eternity, the architects looked upon something they had not foreseen. A species that had not simply accepted the reset. A species that had refused to be erased. The negotiations were not spoken with words, nor fought with weapons. They were fought with will, with history. With the undeniable truth that humanity had carved into the stars. They were not conquerors. They were not destroyers. They were survivors. The battle stretched across timelines, across realities, across the very fabric of existence. The fate of the galaxy did not rest on strength alone, but on the weight of what had come before. The stories of every human who had lived and died. The struggles and triumphs of a species that refused to kneel. And in the end, humanity won. The architects, for the first time in eternity, relented. The cycle would not be erased. The silence would be undone. The galaxy would remain. As the Revenant Prime returned to the present, the effects of the battle rippled outward. The warships that had been caught in temporal disarray realigned. The disappearing planets returned. The stars that had dimmed rekindled their light. Humanity had done the impossible. They had broken the cycle. The surviving civilizations, once scattered in terror, now looked to humanity with something beyond fear, beyond respect, reverence. The four species that had defied time itself. The species that had stood against the architects of the universe, and won. Humanity had made its mark on the stars, and this time, it would never be erased.